It's Friday, so it's time to react to some Mariners trade ideas. Colby, hit it.
You are Locked On Mariners, your daily Seattle Mariners podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Ahoy, sailors. It is Friday, February 28th, 2025. This is Tony Gonzalez and Colby Patnode for the Locked On Mariners podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. It's Fan Fiction Friday, the show where you submit your Mariners trade ideas and we grade them on the 20/80 scale based on things like creativity, uniqueness, and of course, if they actually make sense and work for both teams and all that good stuff. But before we get into quick shout out to our title sponsor today, FanDuel. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Download the app or head to FanDuel.com to get started. And if you want to hear from me and Colby even more and help support the show, you can check out our Patreon. All you have to do to check that out is click the link in the description of this episode. So, kicking us off here on Fanfiction Friday is Udonis, who has a deal with the Reds, Spencer Steer for Taylor Saucedo, and Harry Ford. I'll tell you what, this is probably the maximum that I'm willing to give up for Spencer Steer.
Yeah, Steer is a really interesting player. There are some people who say, no, he's not even good. And there are others who are like, yeah, he went 2020 last year. Like, he can play a lot of positions. And like, they're both kind of right. I mean, like, Steer can play a lot of positions, as in he can stand in a lot of different positions. He's bad at all of them.
Yeah.
And
really
I think,
bad.
Yeah. And I think when you look at Steer overall, you get him for 4 years. He's 27 years old. He went 2020 last year. The year before he had 23 homers. Like, he's got pop. He's not a great American ballpark merchant, better on the road last year. Yeah.
Yeah, he was significantly so, by the way.
Right.
I believe even in 2023, here, let me pull up the splits real quick. Saw this earlier. 2023, 124 WRC plus on the road, 109 at home.
Yeah. Doesn't strike out, sub 21% the last 2 years. He walks. He's a career 10.6% walk guy. So yeah, there are some positives here. The big negatives is that he more or less gives most of that value back defensively. And when you kind of look at where the Mariners are at right now, it's like, where does he play? Your 3 outfield spots are accounted for. First base accounted for. Second base, you want Spencer Steer to play second. Third base, maybe he's better than Polanco. Maybe, but it is kind of this weird thing where it's like, does Steer actually fit on the Mariners roster? And yeah, in a way, if he's going to have like a 110 WRC plus, which, I mean, he's only done once, but if he's going to do that, you find a way to get him in your lineup. So Steer is really interesting. He's a really polarizing player. I kind of get it from both sides, but yeah, I do think Harry Ford is probably like the max I would give up for 4 years of Spencer Steer. But I think it's possible the Reds might be like, we want Randy Arozarena type of because they're both bad defenders who are 2020. And, Steer doesn't have the kind of the star power of Arozarena. He doesn't have the track record of Arozarena, but you do get him for 4 years instead of 2.5 or 2.25, whatever it was.
Yeah, but still, it's like even in Steer's best year, he wasn't Randy Arozarena. He wasn't the peak of Randy Arozarena. So it's just,
I mean, he kind of gets dinged for hitting at Great American Ballpark, even though he's better on the road than he is. But because most of his at-bats come in a hitter's environment, his WRC plus gets dinged a little bit. So, yeah, it's interesting. I think this is the price point where both teams would start to be interested in possibly working something out. The Reds do have Tyler Stevenson, so I don't know how they feel about Ford's ability to catch or anything like that.
Well, I think from the Reds' perspective, he's a more athletic, more club controlled Spencer Steer.
Right. Basically, you're kind of hoping that Harry Ford offensively turns into Spencer Steer. Like, that's probably like the best comp for him, but you're hoping because he's so much more athletic that defensively he finds a home. And the bonus for Harry Ford is that home could be at catcher, which is a high value position. So, yeah, I think this is probably the maxed out the Mariners would do. And I don't even know if they would do it. I think they might just look at this and be like, Ford's going to be in AAA this year. We think Harry Ford might be Steer in 2 years. And it's not like Steer is significantly better offensively than what we project from Luke Raley, Donovan Solano, maybe even Jorge Polanco.
Yeah.
Really not Whitley, Robles, Julio, etc. So I think this is probably a 50.
Yeah, I'll go 50. I'm not sure if this is something the Reds would do, and I'm not sure if this is something the Mariners would do, but this is pretty much my limit in terms of what I would pay for Steer, personally.
Yeah.
So, yeah, solid deal. Good way to kick things off. All right, Adam has a deal here with the Angels, Luis Rengifo for Logan Evans and Trent Thornton.
Yeah, I mean, let's assume for a second that the Angels are actually willing to trade with the Mariners and Jerry DiPoto, because so far they have not been, and that is a one-sided thing. For 1 year of Rengifo, it feels about right, honestly. Now, Thornton is kind of like whatever, he's out of options anyways, and he might be one of the guys who's just out of this bullpen when Brash comes back. Anyways, and he's on the back end of the bullpen in terms of like importance. So he's kind of a throw in. It's kind of a little way to save some money on Rengifo. He's making about 5. Thornton's making 2. So that's more about money and all that. And you can replace Thornton pretty easily with what you have in-house. Would I trade Logan Evans for a versatile everyday infielder who's only got 1 year of club control left?
Without hesitation.
Yeah, I would. So would you be better if he was your second baseman this year and Dylan Moore was on the bench and doing his normal Dylan Moore thing? Yes, you would. And so is that worth Logan Evans? To me, it is. You get to the deadline. We'll see how the other pitchers develop and all that. But I think, this is a guy, Rengifo's 2.5, 3-1 player. And he's a switch hitter, can play multiple positions.
It's actually never been a 2-win player in his career by FanGraph standards.
Really interesting.
Yeah.
How many games? What's his career high in games played? Because I think there's some. I think there's
127 in 2022, 126 in 2023, and then only 78 this past year.
Right. So Rengifo, pretty good player.
Yeah.
Logan Evans, pretty good prospect.
Yeah.
And that's what you do. You trade pretty good prospects for pretty good players, and you sacrifice long-term potential for short-term gain. That's what a trade's supposed to be. So I think this one's pretty close in terms of value. So if we ignore the whole, the Angels won't trade with the Mariners thing, 50, 55.
Yeah.
But because of the whole, the Angels won't trade with the Mariners thing, the viability goes down, unfortunately. So
I think they just negotiate in bad faith and they go, we want Blaz, or we want Arroyo, or we want
something ridiculous.
Yeah, just Evans is about as far as I would be willing to go. For a year of Rengifo with the injury concerns. He's been a really good player when he's been healthy. I mean, last year he slashed 300, 347, 417. Yeah, that would help the Seattle Mariners.
Yeah.
In their current state.
I think I like the deal. I know it's not very realistic, but it's just because the Angels are kind of, what's a nice word for this? Stupid. So I think I'll just stick with a 50 and kind of split the difference.
Yeah, I'm feeling a 50 on this one as well. I think in general, in a vacuum, makes a ton of sense. But yeah, the Angels Mariners connection, if you will, drives it down quite a bit. So yeah. All right, we are going to go over more of your trades here in just a moment. But first, a reminder: this episode of the Locked On Mariners podcast is once again brought to you by FanDuel. When the game tips off, the NBA action is just getting started, and there's no better place to get in on it than FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. With FanDuel, you can place live bets throughout the game. So even if you miss the opening tip-off or want to bet on a fourth quarter comeback, you can stay in the action. And if you're looking for a bigger payout, you can even combine your live bets into a same game parlay. I love using FanDuel's live betting feature because it keeps every moment of the game exciting. Whether I'm backing my team for a late game rally or picking a player to hit a clutch 3, I never feel like I missed my chance. Plus, the app is super easy to use, and when you win, you get paid instantly. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your shot at $150 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. And you're listening to the Locked On Mariners podcast. It is Fan Fiction Friday. We are going over some of your Mariners trades. Jack has a deal here with the Mets. The Mets get Matt Brash, Michael Morales, and Mitch Haniger. And the Mariners get Mark Vientos. Jack adds that the Mets get some high leverage help in their bullpen, good prospect in Morales, and eat at least half, if not all, of Haniger's contract. Would the Mets do this? No, they would not do this.
Yeah, the answer is no. The Mets wouldn't do that, and I don't think it matters how much money you're asking. You could eat all of Haniger's contract, and they'd still say no to this. Brash, it's really tough to trade for Matt Brash right now because you don't know what you're going to get, and you're not trading for Matt Brash thinking like, oh, well, 2026 is when I really need him. You're the Mets, right? And you're trading an impact piece now. You want an impact piece back right now. And in general, an everyday bat for even a high leverage reliever is not a trade that happens.
Nope.
There's just a value deficit here that isn't going to be made up. And that deficit is made even bigger by them taking on any of Haniger's money. And
a high leverage arm for a prospect that becomes an everyday bat. That happens.
Yeah,
but
sure. Of course.
An established everyday bat, who's still young, pre-arb, like Vientos is, no.
Right. And when you stack Brash coming off of an injury, when you stack how worthless Mitch Haniger is, especially to the Mets, and your big like connecting piece to kind of try and bridge that gap is Michael Morales, who's a fine prospect. He's top 15, 20 type of guy. I don't remember where we had him. I think it was around 15 in our prospect.
It was like 14
ranks.
or 15, yeah.
Yeah. So like he's solid prospect. He's not a great prospect. And I feel like you need to add a great prospect for the Mets to even consider this. And at that point, if you're the Mariners, why? Like, I mean, you're going to add Colt Emerson to get rid of money.
That's what I was going to say. You probably have to do here.
Yeah.
In the
it's just, no, you're not doing that. So no, I don't like, even if Haniger wasn't a part of this thing, Brash and Morales for Vientos, no reason for the Mets to do that deal. So yeah, maybe this winter, like something, probably not Vientos, but like trading Brash for like a kind of like a major league bat, probably not as good as Vientos, maybe, but trading Brash right now, you're probably selling low on him. And this is the Mets buying extremely high on Brash while selling kind of low on Vientos. Because right now they have the at-bats to give Vientos. He's not blocked or anything. Yeah. That's the other thing too. So
this is a 25.
I mean, I'll give it like a 30-35 because it's relatively creative. It's Brash, and it's trading him for a third baseman. But it's not feasible. It's like I said, the Mets are somehow buying high on Brash and selling low on Vientos all in one trade. And they're not going to do that.
Stan has a deal here with the Dodgers. 1-for-1, Mitch Haniger for Chris Taylor. This is fun in a vacuum. Why would the Dodgers do this? Like, I would rather have Chris Taylor than Mitch Haniger on the Mariners. Yeah. Mm-hmm. I think also the Dodgers would rather have Chris Taylor than Mitch Haniger. So
yeah, there's also a chance you might actually end up losing money in this deal because there's a $4 million buyout on Taylor for his club option next year. And he's set to make 13 this year, so it's 17 million. We still don't know if Haniger's actually making 15.5 or 17 this year.
Yeah.
Now it's only $1.5 million, so that doesn't really matter, but you know who it matters to, unfortunately. Yeah, why would the Dodgers do this? Taylor was awful last year. I understand that. So was Haniger.
So was
And
Haniger.
Taylor's at least still got some athleticism left in him.
Yep.
Here's kind of what's in, like, if we even assume that like the club option in 2026, what if that was just an extra year, right? It's like, okay, well, if you're the Mariners, why would you trade Haniger to have another Haniger situation next year?
Yeah.
And not save any money this year?
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. Like the bad contract swap for Haniger thing is dead at this point. It's dead.
It doesn't exist. Yeah.
No, I mean, even if there was an opportunity out there right now, like Haniger is so valueless that you'd have to take on a second year of like a Mitch Haniger like contract, and that defeats the whole purpose.
Yeah,
because you're not saving any money and you're back in the same spot as you were last year. So, yeah, Haniger, unless the Marlins suddenly decide that they actually care about getting their luxury tax money or whatever it is, unless that happens, Haniger is either getting DFA'd or he's making the opening day roster. He's not getting traded. And again, he's certainly not getting traded for another bad contract. So, pick this deal specifically to talk about Haniger and his trade value and how trading him, unless it's to the Marlins, who are going to eat a good chunk of that money for nothing, and attaching a prospect to him, he's just not going to get traded. They're just that ship has sailed, and it probably never even got to harbor to begin with. No.
So I mean, it's fun as a swap between these two guys could be. 35, 40, I'm somewhere in there.
Yeah, it's about right. It's kind of not going to happen.
You're listening to the Locked On Mariners podcast. Let's go over these last couple of trades we got here. Casey has a deal with the Diamondbacks. Ooh, this is a doozy. All right. Jordan Lawlar, Kevin Ginkel, and Blake Walston to the Mariners for Andres Munoz, Dylan Moore, Ty Pete, Michael Arroyo, and Hunter Crandon.
Yeah, I think like we kind of accidentally been a running theme here. Trading an elite reliever for an everyday player doesn't happen often. But Lawlar might be the type of player, prospect, that you would trade to get an elite reliever, particularly in Arizona right now, where they just signed Perdomo to an extension. They have Marte locked in. Now they have an opening at third base, and so they can push Lawlar to third base after this year, after Gino, assuming Gino leaves after this year. So it's not like they don't have any room for Lawlar, but he's not going to play one of the two, his two best positions to provide value. The Diamondbacks need some pitching. So could Munoz be traded this offseason for Lawlar, similar to Diaz being traded for Kelnick a few years back? Only this time the Mariners wouldn't be doing it as a selling move. Maybe. But then the whole Colt Emerson comes into play here. Like, how long is Lawlar going to be your shortstop? Or do you just now trade Colt Emerson, or do you just transition one of these guys to third base immediately? So there are a lot of moving parts here, but Ginkel is good. He helps, but you're still losing with Munoz. You have no idea if Lawlar is going to help you this year. You think he probably will. You don't have a replacement really for Dylan Moore. I mean, I guess Rivas. I would assume Casey's looking at this and being like, well, Lawlar would be on the opening day roster, so he would either play second or third, and then Polanco, and then Ryan Bliss or Rivas would be the utility guy for this year. Tia Pete, great nickname. Another typo
really?
Ty overlooked.
Okay, there we go.
I believe it's Tio, but so Pete, Arroyo, and Munoz basically for Lawlar. No, I don't think so. Not with where the Mariners are at right now in their window. It's interesting.
Yeah. And this trade seems more so focused on 2026 and beyond. Right now, I'm more of the mindset that the only year that matters right now is the one that you're currently in. And so that's kind of how I'm approaching this deal. I think in general, this trade is really good. Like just kind of just going through it
feels
in my
like
head
an
right now.
trade though, doesn't it?
Yeah, it feels like an off-season trade.
Like a next winter type of trade.
Which technically it still is the off-season, but...
Yeah, kind of. But
yeah.
This feels like a winter meetings trade.
Yeah.
Where everyone's like, whoa, wow, that's this doesn't feel like a March trade or even a July trade.
Yeah. No, I think the process of this is really sound. I'm not sure that this is something that the Mariners or that is ultimately beneficial to the 2025 Mariners specifically.
Right. And that does have to carry a lot of weight. So yeah, it's a good effort though by Casey. I'll give him that. It's like you kind of have to like sit there and be like, you kind of counterpoint yourself here.
I think this is one of the better trades we've gotten on a Fan Fiction Friday in a while. I think this is a 65.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, I was going to say 55 because I don't think it's really realistic at all. But like,
come with me to the 60s at least.
No.
Okay. Last trade of the day comes from Ham Swaggerty 69. Ryan Mountcastle to the Mariners. Here we go again. Another Ryan Mountcastle deal. We love these. Orioles get Brandon Garcia and Troy Taylor.
I wouldn't trade one of those guys. Not a fan of Mountcastle. Not because he's not, a pretty solid player and not because he doesn't help, but because you have that guy. He's not a good defender. He's never been a 2-win player. He's not going to hit for a ton of power. He's Donovan Solano. And I have Donovan Solano. And because I don't think this team is actually going to cut, Mitch Haniger, I don't need a bench full of DHs. That doesn't actually help me. Whereas, Troy Taylor is certainly going to help me out of the bullpen this year. And there's a pretty good chance at some point Garcia helps me out of the bullpen this year as well. So I don't want to give up two useful, bullpen pieces, both of whom are under club control for 6+ years to pay, give up both of those guys to pay another Donovan Solano $6 million to mostly be on my bench and to hit, to DH against left-handed pitching. I've got that guy. And I'm not going to give up more money and good prospects to get that another one of those guys. I don't need Ryan Mountcastle. He doesn't really help me that much. So I'm out.
Yes, and so I have to trade two guys that are probably going to help me out of my bullpen this year to get Mountcastle. No, it's a non-starter for me, frankly. Just don't like Mountcastle that much for all the reasons that Colby just laid out.
I wouldn't trade one of these guys straight up for Mountcastle. Now, if the Mariners did it, I wouldn't be furious if they traded one of these guys. If they just traded like Garcia for Mountcastle, like on March 26th or whatever, I'd be like, okay, I guess. But there's no world where I really like it. And there's no world where I, as the GM, would do it. I've got this guy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. All right. So 35, 40.
Yeah.
What are you feeling?
35.
Yeah. All right. So that's going to do it for our show. Thank you so much for joining us here on the Locked On Mariners podcast. For Colby Patnode, I'm Titan Gonzalez. Be sure to give us a follow on Twitter at @LO_Mariners. You can follow me at Titan Gonzalez and Colby at CPAT11. That's CPAT11. We're also on Blue Sky. You can follow me at TDG, Colby at MLB Colby, and the show at Locked On Mariners. Have yourself a beautiful baseball day, and we'll see you next time. Peace.